Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's episode of The Fishing Teacher, and really happy you guys are making some time out of your day to join me for the video. Always appreciate that. And guys, today we've got a good video. We're going to be talking about fishing points, secondary and main lake points. You guys that watch the channel here or you watch my other channels, you hear me talking about points all the time because in my opinion, if you could just say, Randy, you can only fish one type of structure from now on to catch bass on, what it would be on a point. And so what I want to do is I want to sort of go over and give you guys some foundational advice on how to fish a point, because all points are not the same. There's a lot of different options and variables based upon the conditions you have. So we're just sort of going to run through and sort of give you a little mini seminar on how to approach a point, how to fish it, what to look for, and what makes one point better than the others. Also, guys, before we get started, just two quick housekeeping tips, dreaded daily. You guys already get tired of hearing it, and you probably fast forward through most of it, but I appreciate you guys listening to it. Just wanted to give a quick invitation to, if you guys haven't had a chance to subscribe here to The Fishing Teacher, that'd be much appreciated, hitting that subscribe button. It's free and easy. And also, if you like the content here and it's helping you catch some fish and you want to show your support for the channel, the best thing you can do is to go into my description of each video and bookmark and use that Tackle Warehouse link to purchase your tackle. It's a great way to support the channel. I know you guys get burned out on me hearing me say that, but it's much appreciated by me and my family if you could do that. Okay, guys, if you, like I said, I talk about points constantly. You know, points are good all year long. There's not a single month out of the year that points are not a really good bass structure. Even if the fish are spawning, fish even spawn on points. They're just the perfect scenario for a fish because they offer a diversity of cover. They offer, based upon the point, they offer different slopes. They offer access to deep water. Some of them have structure. Some of them have hard breaks on them. A lot of people plant brush on points. Bait fish use them. They're sort of like a stopping place along a highway of the lake structure. So let's talk a little bit about what you want to look for and how points are different. Now, when you determine how you want to fish a point, in my opinion, most of it depends on the slope of the point and the water visibility. The water visibility and the slope of the point and the slope of the point is going to determine how those fish position on the point. Now, in general, the flatter the point is, the more the fish are going to be dispersed over it. It's like if you have a flat point, it's like a clay or gravel or small rock, or you got a point that goes way out into the lake, there's a lot of area the fish can be on. They can be right up on the bank. They could be 15 or 20 feet off the point. They could be out way off the end of the point. They could be suspended. They could be on the sides. They could be everywhere. So when you're dealing with a flat point, the first thing you have to determine, as with all points, is the water visibility. The water visibility is going to really determine the depth that you guys need to fish at, along with the species of bass that you have. The more mix of a species, like if you have a lake that's got a diversity, like a spotted bass, largemouth and smallmouth mix, you're going to have the fish use a lot more of that point as far as being on the bottom or being suspended. But if you have a largemouth predominant point, you're going to have a lot of those fish normally holding closer to the bottom, holding a little bit shallower for the most part. There are some variations, but that's a pretty good rule of thumb. Now let's talk about the different degrees of water visibility on a flat point, and then we'll talk about how to approach it. A lot of it's just common sense. The dirtier the water, the shallower the fish are going to be. So if you've got water visibility that's probably, under 2 foot for the most part, look for those fish to be on that point in less than 5 feet of water on the point ends and sides. When you're talking about a point, a lot of points aren't like defined. It's like, a lot of people think about, you can see this box right here, like this would be the point, like a real defined point. Some points aren't that defined. Some of them are rounded points. Some of them don't look like much and they have a point underwater. So every point is set up, but regardless of how the point is laid out as far as what it looks like, in less than 2 foot of visibility, those fish are going to be on the bottom and they're going to be a little bit shallower. Now, as the water clears up a little bit, let's say you go from 2 feet, say you got water visibility in that 2.5 to 4 foot range. Once you start to get in bat, you start having the fish use a little bit more diversity of area on the point. They can still be shallow, like early and late in the day or under low light conditions, but also they're going to be moving out a little bit deeper. As you get 4 foot of clarity and approaching 4 foot of clarity, You're going to have some fish that are using water visibility, or excuse me, water depths down to 25 or 30 feet. You're going to have a little bit of suspended action and suspended activity. So they're going to be on those point ends and sides, and they could be all over the place, again, based upon the conditions. The sunlight intensity, the time of day, the wind, all play a factor, water temperature, and as far as how deep they are. And if you have a real clear lake, like water visibility of over 4 feet, that even scatters those fish out more. If you've got real clear water, again, you can have fish using shallow water. They can be in 10 or 15 feet of water on the bottom. They could be in 30, 40, 50 foot of water on the bottom of the point if you don't have a thermocline. And if you do have a thermocline, they can be suspended out over really deep water, and they're not necessarily on the point, but they're associating to the point. So if you got like 6, 7 foot of visibility and you got a nice flat point, there could be schools of fish suspended in and around that point on the sides and the ends that are just roaming out there chasing bait. So there's a lot of different options there. On a clear water point, the techniques that you use, again, are based on the water temperature. For the most part, when the water's cold, I'm using a jerk bait or an A-rig or a little swim bait. And as the water warms up, I'm going to more like top waters, maybe dragging a football head jig, shaky head, Ned rig, something along those lines. Now that's a flat point. As a point gets a little bit steeper, you got different grades to a point. It's not just a steep point or a flat point. Some of the points have a gradual slope to them, and they're sort of in between. As you have a steeper, as the point becomes steeper, even if it becomes a medium grade all the way up to a steep point, it's going to make it a little bit easier to you, because as that point drops off sharper, the fish have less of an area that they can actually use, because that really immediate access to deep water will keep them way out off those points. So as that point gets steeper, the best rule of thumb that I can give you is just start moving closer to the point. And as the point, if it's a very steep point, the fish can be really close to it. A lot of times, some of those points, the main river channel runs right next to the point, and the point may only be 15, 20 foot out from the bank, dropping off into real deep water. So obviously that creates a different scenario. What you're going to find as the point gets steeper, the fish tend to use specifically the end of the point. They don't use the sides of the point as much. As the points get flatter, those fish will not only use the end of the point, but they'll use like 100 yards down the side of each point. And obviously a lot of it depends on how it breaks off on both sides of the point. But best rule of thumb is they're going to be scattered farther out away from the bank on a flat point, and they're going to be closer to the point, as it's a little bit steeper. Ideal scenarios for this, what I like to fish points, a lot of it, again, depends on the time of year and the type of fish you're fishing for. If as far as the techniques go and the conditions, there's two different scenarios I like to fish a point. I either like it to be a pretty stiff wind coming in on the point, or I like it calm, one of the two. It seems like in between, not quite so good, but when you got a stiff wind coming into a point, it usually activates those fish more. It puts them shallower. It puts them in more of an aggressive mood to hit a moving bait. So if I got a lot of wind coming in on point, that's when I'm fishing my baits like a spinner bait, crank baits, swim baits, something I can move horizontally through the water column. And if it's calm or there's not much wind, again, based upon the water visibility and the water temperature, a topwater lure is one of my favorite baits. Topwater fishing on points is probably one of the best areas that you can fish topwaters. And as well, if you got calm conditions and it's different water temperatures, that's when your Ned rigs and your shaky heads, football head jigs, Texas rigs, all that type of stuff works. So a lot of it is like there's, when you're talking about fishing a point, there's not one thing that's going to work on every point. Every lake is laid out different. It's like a point, if you're fishing a point on Lake Hartwell in South Carolina, it's going to be completely different than a point here like, at Bull Shoals Lake or Table Rock where I fish there. If you're fishing a point like on Kentucky Lake or TVA Lake, those tend to be really flat points, and the points tend to be underwater more. So that's a different scenario. And, points, like I said, they can be visible or invisible depending upon how they're set up on the lake. Regardless, it would behoove you to become a master at fishing points. There are always bass on points. It's like if you're any lake that you go to, guys, if you pull up to a main lake point, or specifically a secondary point in a creek, there's bass living on that point, without a doubt, 100%. It's just figuring out how to trigger them. And in general, there's two type of points. You've got secondary points, and a secondary point, if you're not familiar, it's a point that's located within a cove or in a creek. And a main lake point is just like it said, it's on the main body of the lake. It's not back in a cove or a creek. And based upon the time of year, they can all be good. In general, I fish the main lake points usually in the colder months and the hotter months, and the secondary points sort of more in the spring and the fall time of the year. So anyway, guys, hope it help you guys catch a few more fish, and we'll check in later. See you.